former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich is with us. Mr. Speaker, great to see you as always.
It's good to see you.
The week that was Trump, this was a pretty amazing week from my perspective. I would argue even the best week he's had in the campaign. Reason? I think he stood on message. He only talked about Obama and Hillary, talked about failures, and he offered solutions to some very significant problems that we face as a country and a world. And then, of course, his trip to Louisiana earlier today.
Well, I think this was clearly the best week he's had since he announced last year. And I think you're right. Part of what made it so powerful a week is he showed leadership. He showed leadership on dealing with the irreconcilable wing of Islam that threatens us with terrorism. He showed leadership in Milwaukee in working with Sheriff Clark and with Mayor Rudy Giuliani to develop a very powerful speech on very short notice and delivered it very well. He showed leadership in North Carolina. He showed leadership in going to Louisiana at a time when you have Barack Obama golfing and not able to get off the vacation, and you have Hillary Clinton apparently tired and taking a day or two off to rest. And so you saw real leadership. And finally, in his speech today in Michigan, his direct appeal to the African-American community, his clear statement that he wants to be a vehicle to change their lives, to offer them a chance to have safety in places like Milwaukee and Chicago and Baltimore, that he wants to represent all Americans. I don't know of any Republican presidential candidate in modern times who has had the willingness to reach out and include all Americans in their appeal. And that makes, I think, this the best week so far of his campaign and potentially a historic turning point in defining Trump versus Clinton.
When you have 81 days to go now, if we're looking for the secret sauce, I think right now it's about winning days and putting days together and winning weeks in a campaign, and I think that's very pivotal leading up to important debates. But objectively speaking, from my perspective, him staying focused on Hillary and Obama's failures and talking about real issues and talking about how bad things have gotten and how much better things can be, it seems to be a special sauce there. That seems to be working versus getting distracted by maybe an off-the-cuff comment and using a teleprompter. How important going forward is that he continue this?
Well, I think it's tremendously important, and I think he's winning with it. And I think, you know, he's a very smart guy, and I think he's going to do what works. And the fact is he's the one who insisted on Tuesday in Milwaukee that they use a teleprompter because he knew that what he wanted to say was so compelling and at the same time so potentially dangerous that you had to say it with great clarity and with great discipline, and that's exactly what he pulled off. And I think you'll see a lot more of this. I also think adding people of the caliber of Steve Bannon and Kellyanne Conway mean that he's going to have a drive and an energy and a detailed understanding of social media that will really be remarkable in helping him fashion what he wants to achieve. He clearly wants to win.
What do you think about Paul leaving?
Well, I don't know what all the details were. I thought Paul did an important job in getting through the convention and getting the campaign more of a national campaign, more of a professional campaign. My guess is that Paul was being very generous in recognizing that all the news media was never going to let up on whatever happened in Ukraine, unlike their willingness to ignore Podesta and Clinton and Russia. And so I think probably in that sense, this was the right outcome. But nobody should underestimate how much Paul Manafort did to really help get this campaign to where it is right now.
It's very interesting. You mentioned his speech in Michigan earlier today, and I think it was very similar to his reach out just outside of Milwaukee to the black community. We have a 58% increase black Americans on food stamps since Obama's been president, 20% increase black community out of the labor force since Obama's been president. And what was interesting is on Monday when he talked about ISIS, he talked about the persecution of women, gays, lesbians, Christians, and Jews in countries like Saudi Arabia that give Hillary money. And then he talked about the black community. Then he talked about the same thing. And then he said this in North Carolina. I think we'd be negligent if we didn't play what he said last night that got so much attention.
Sometimes in the heat of debate and speaking on a multitude of issues, you don't choose the right words or you say the wrong thing. I have done that. And believe it or not, I regret it.
Thank you.
And I do regret it, particularly where it may have caused personal pain. Too much is at stake for us to be consumed with these issues. But one thing I can promise you this: I will always tell you the truth.
That, I thought, was a huge moment. What was your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, the country thought it was a huge moment. The number of people who told me they thought it was a huge moment. Look, Donald Trump is a remarkable person, and he's extraordinarily smart, and he is remarkably successful, and he's a great competitor. But he had a little difficulty. It was almost like a contest between his stubbornness and his IQ. His IQ really knew that he had to move to a new level, that he had to become a real presidential alternative. His stubbornness said, wait a second, I've always been this guy. I carried 37 primaries. You know, why am I having to change? And I think what you've seen this week is literally, I don't know if you'll like the term or not, but you've seen a more mature and in a way a more humble Donald Trump, a guy who's beginning to realize that seeking to lead the most complicated country in the world, seeking to lead 325 million people, is a real burden, and that you've got to think through in a very special way how you're going to lead the American people and how you're going to bring them together. Mm-hmm. This has been a week where he's talked over and over about bringing people together in a way that's really very, very important.
You know, it's interesting because Hillary had her post-convention bounce, Trump had his, and now the polls begin to tighten again. You had Rasmussen and Zogby within 2 points this week, LA Times 0.6% difference. Do you see this? Well, let me ask you this straight up. Do you think he wins this?
Yeah, for two reasons. First of all, I was privileged to sit through a 2-hour briefing over at the Republican National Committee outlining all the things they've learned about Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. It is so staggering. We haven't seen 10% of what we're going to learn in September. She is going to drown under the impact. And you're seeing it, by the way, already when you have somebody like former Democratic Governor Ed Rendell, who is also a former Democratic National Chairman, saying they ought to close the foundation. When you see the Boston Globe, a liberal paper, say, close the foundation. Every Democratic candidate in the country in the next 20 days will be asked by the Republican candidate, are you for closing the Clinton Foundation?
By the way, they're not even going to close it unless she wins. And she said she would have closed it when she was a senator.
Well, first of all, here's the real problem. Whatever they say now about what they're going to restrict, you have to ask, so why didn't you do that when you were Secretary of State? Because it is admitting that there is at least an appearance of corruption. And frankly, given what I've seen in the last 24 hours, there are case after case after case. So my first point, Sean, is she's going to lose. Now, when she loses, Donald Trump's going to win. But my second point, and the reason I'm so excited about this week, is Donald Trump is on the verge of creating a genuinely historic movement which brings together Americans of all backgrounds, not just Republicans, but potentially a bigger coalition than Reagan had. And that's where his appeals, and he's meeting tomorrow with Latino leaders in New York. You're going to see more and more effort, I think, for them to bring all Americans together to make America great again. That, to me, the combination of his doing positive things as she sinks, could lead to a historic election.
All right, Mr. Speaker, thanks for being with us.